We unfortunately lost the late, great Bill Walton last week, which on the Cam Show means one thing, and that's we bring in my boss, Cory Dickman, here from Rip City Roundtable.
Yes, sir.
Blazers Edge.
Yeah.
And
the premier Trailblazers podcast on the planet.
That's for sure.
Facts right there.
And the biggest Blazers fan I know.
That's true.
Truly one of one.
One of one.
As in, you're the only Blazers fan. I think
you're
the only Blazers fan I know.
That's true. Okay.
Which, like, I get it. Small market, you know.
Yeah.
And I lived 3,000 miles away from there growing up. So, obviously, Bill Walton's synonymous with the Blazers.
Yep.
More synonymous with my team, the Celtics.
Yeah.
Who could forget?
And you're probably I have some Celtics fans in my life, but it's because I worked in Portland, Maine for a year.
Wait, can we unpack that? You're from the Portland, Oregon area, and you worked in Portland, Maine.
Worked in Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine rocks.
It was great.
Maine rocks.
Great town.
Yeah.
Worked with tons of guys from the Connecticut area and Massachusetts, and they all big Celtics fans and love their, Cory get Dunkin' Donuts. That was my job every morning.
That's pretty cool.
Go get the Dunkin'.
It's a pretty important job.
Yeah.
So, I wish we could talk more about Duncan, but we do have to talk Bill Walton.
Yeah.
One of the other great passing front court members. Get it, Duncan?
Oh,
see what I did there?
There we go.
Anyway, that was a real stretch.
Timmy.
So,
okay.
Bill Walton, we've heard all kinds of things the past week or so about how great a person he was, and how helpful he was, and what he stand up, and that's all great. We're not going to get into as much of that today. It's been said. I didn't know Bill Walton personally, but what fascinates me and has for years is the career of Bill Walton as the basketball player, which is obviously just a small part of his whole image. And the magnum opus of Bill Walton is 77, winning the title with the Blazers. He is known as a Blazer professionally. That was his crowning moment. He wins the championship in 77. He wins the MVP in 78. Things go awry not too long after that. But, Cory, in your life as a Blazers fan, is Bill Walton and the 77 team, is that like the Mecca?
I know
it was before your time.
Yeah,
I don't want people to
time.
think that you're of a certain age.
Everything always gets, as far as time frames go about the current team, it's always this many years since 77. And for example, at the height when I was a kid, the 99 and then the 2000 team that got so close to reaching the finals, and arguably if had made the finals in 99 or 2000, probably win the championship.
Yeah, because we're looking at the 8th seeded Knicks in 99, and I think Indiana in 2000.
Was
which
a good team for sure.
But not as good as they were 5 or 6 years later, nor 4 or 5 years before.
No.
Yeah.
And so, but every time, we would hear during those series with the Spurs, and then the Lakers the next season, 22 years ago, we won the title, right? Or 23 years ago, right? And so it's that's the,
that's like the watershed.
Before Christ, after death kind of thing, right? That's the time frame is 77. And so, yes, was not alive during that time, but, my dad was, in college at that time. And so a lot of people, that I'd interact with, my friends as parents, they all recall, going to the parade and the Blazer Mania. And it just is, because it's a small market, it's like when a college team just goes on a big run and the campus just becomes all about that team. That's that was like Portland back then, and still kind of is, even today. And so it just wasn't Cam, you're blessed, right? It's Patriots won another one.
Yeah, I've done pretty well.
Sox won a champ. It's I don't even know what that's like. Every 2 months you turn around and you have a title.
Used to be that way, yeah.
Yeah, in Portland it's all things stop. Time just stops. So that is what I remember most about people talking about that team, because it's we got that title, and then it was really the starting point of all the what ifs, right? Of all the Blazers injuries and bad draft selections and all that stuff. Really kind of, there's no curse of the Walton, right? But it really kind of started
But it
happening.
starts after that,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
And what kind of makes that perfect is Bill Walton was perfect for Portland.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a bigger hippie, granola. Like, usually Portland will do that to people, but he was already there. Like, in the championship parade, he's complaining that someone stole his bike.
Yes.
Because he took a bike to meet the team.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
He just fit perfectly.
Yeah. There was a story, I think it was a month after the title, or it might have even been a week after, where he was just, some people went to a lake, and there was just this big old redheaded dude, no shirt on, jean shorts, and just laying out on a blanket, and they were like, man, that guy, he's a big guy.
Looks like he's about 7 feet tall.
And it's just Bill, just hanging out by the lake. Nobody else with him. No crew, no whatever, just chilling. And it's like, city player, like, that had to be one of the perfect matches in NBA history. Right.
And there's really, like, very few of those across sports, I would say. Like, players will fit because they win. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that there's anything like that you point to Michael Jordan and you're like, that's Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, no, he was obviously an obsessive worker, and he won a lot, and he was the idol of Chicago. It's not necessarily like, you find, but like Walton certainly had it. And on a basketball standpoint, he fits perfectly, because I think a lot of people don't really realize it now. Like, we were watching Nikola Jokic before Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
Like, way he's coming down with the ball, and before his feet even hit the ground, he's passing it. He's got the perfect outlet, and not just starting a fast break, but in close quarters, he is maybe the best passing big man of all time, at least until Jokic, at least at the center position. Like, he was ahead of his time, and it made the Blazers, like, an immovable object.
Yeah, and in like an era where that just wasn't a thing either. It's
right.
Like, it was so weird to adapt, and I think that's why.
I think it was kind of taking a little bit of both too, because that era is, pack the paint.
Yep.
Got to have a dominant, defensively especially, defensive dominant big man.
Yeah.
And he is that and can be that in whatever offense, but obviously his best tool is that passing ability. So it's like, all right, we'll suck you into your game defensively, and then we're going to, run our ass off to run you out of the building.
Yes, yeah. And was a great defensive center, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was always the second, third, fourth part of the game, his game, that doesn't get talked about. But it's like he could anchor that back end of the defense, stay out of foul trouble, force missed shots, and then, like you said, then that ability to grab rebounds and go is just wild, because he wasn't just grabbing it and then taking 2 seconds looking for the point guard. It's run, guys. Let's go.
Which is, you mentioned the defensive part too, because, he's 77. He's like 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
And in the semifinals, the conference finals, they sweep the Lakers. Sweep? Am I right in that?
Was it a sweep in the conference
they
finals?
Kicked their ass.
Maybe,
yeah. And he took Kareem to the woodshed.
Yeah, he did.
Like,
he did.
Kareem got his, so to speak, but it was like a Russell Wilt thing. Like, Walton disrupted him enough.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's funny. One of my favorite podcasters grew up in Boston in the 80s, and so he's a big, like, 80s Celtics fan.
Yeah.
And he, in one of his episodes, said, like, look up this game, 86. Okay. The Lakers-Celtics regular season. Bill Walton, 6th man of the year. We're going to get to that. And the guy was like, he kicked Kareem's ass in that game. And I looked at the highlights, and I looked at the stats, and he was so right. He played, like, 18 minutes and had 7 blocked shots and 10 rebounds against Kareem. Like, against maybe the best center ever, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
And all that to go back to Portland, like, it was the style and it was the players. I mean, he and Maurice Lucas specifically. And that looked like, especially in the context of the late 70s, where we had 4 years, 4 different champions that never happened in the NBA, that was going to be a dynasty.
Yeah.
And it's the closest, in my mind, I can think of in a sport that it felt the closest to a dynasty without really coming close, only having 1 championship.
Yeah.
Like, we could have been talking about that as one of the, like, the Showtime Lakers before the Showtime Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, they would have been perfect in that era where, like you said, there was so much parity. So, there would have been, who knows if a rookie Magic Johnson wins a title in his first year, like, maybe they don't even get out of the West because they're just not quite ready to take on a Portland team that maybe was coming off 3 out of 4 years or something, winning a title. So, now
but that was a real possibility. Like, I know it's kind of, 45 years later we can say that, but 78's the Bullets, and 79 it's Seattle.
Yes.
With Dennis Johnson winning the MVP as like a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, this is not out of the realm. They were 50-10 in 78 before Walton got hurt.
Well, and they just have such a, Portland has this weird like home court advantage in the way that, one, like, there's nothing else to do. So all these people just come out to these games, they sell out the crowd even if the team's bad. And then when teams travel up there, yes, now there's not the Sonics anymore, but there were the Sonics. But now it's like weird. You look at a map of where all the NBA teams are, and it's like Portland and this huge nothing around it. And so it's like teams go up there, and it's kind of funky. I remember I used to hear Kobe would talk about this. Kobe Bryant would be like, that trip to Portland. He's like, I always hated that trip to Portland. It was just eerie, and it's always cloudy, and there's nothing else up there, and they play and they leave. And so even back then, I mean, teams, traveling to Portland for those home games was always kind of funky, and I think that obviously helped in the finals. But when they played the 76ers that year and able to come back from that 0-2 deficit, but even just that's where the city and the fan base and all that all kind of plays into that that weirdness about being up there. And
Walton's career takes a really weird turn. I'll use Bill Simmons. I've listened to a lot of podcasts about Bill. If you can't tell, Simmons had said from 78 or the end of 78, 79 till 86 when he gets back with the Celtics. It's like if Eddie Murphy had done Coming to America and Trading Places, did absolutely nothing for 7 years, then did Beverly Hills Cop, and then did nothing ever again. Like, it was this 7-year stretch is like really a pivotal one in the history of the NBA. Like, there's a great butterfly effect you can do with Bill Walton because, again, he goes to the Clippers after a misdiagnosed injury in Portland and barely plays over 50 games once, and it's like this lost era, and like we mentioned, the end of the 70s, it's not a good time for the NBA. There's a cocaine problem. The finals are on tape delay, and then we get Bird versus Magic, and that's what revitalizes it to the NBA that we know today. But if he doesn't get hurt, there's not the huge onus on Bird Magic. Bird's the great white hope because, America couldn't handle how black the league was back then. Like, we had a top 3 player in the league that was white already. He just couldn't play. And I think he's one of the great what-if stories in the history of basketball. And he is a Hall of Famer. Like, he's at worst the second best college player ever to play. His years in the NBA are still, Hall of Fame worthy. It was just so many years that he couldn't get on the court. So 86, goes to the Celtics, has one just magical run left in him. Somehow plays like 95 games that year. Crazy. It's maybe the best NBA team ever. And he's a part of that. Like, he's the sixth man of the year. And he talks about how much that revitalized his career. Like, I wonder if we don't have that, how do we remember Bill Walton? It's a weird thing to think about. Like, the Hall of Fame's obviously basketball. It's not just the NBA, so that would give him an out to get in anyway. But, like, I don't know if he's seriously considered the same without a brief but fruitful revitalization. I think he needed that. He needed that bookend moment, and that was like perfect because he didn't have to. He didn't have to, like, those 95 games, 92, 95 games that he plays. He's like 18 minutes a game or something like that. Like, he's not out there 30 minutes. He doesn't have to carry the team. But coming off the bench, he can make an impact that's memorable, and he can still play. That was like the perfect situation for him because, and he like still had it too. He absolutely still had it. And we've talked about this, Cam. Like, does the 86 team still win the title? Absolutely. Probably. But are they known as like one of the best teams ever? I don't know. I don't think so. Without Walton, you're saying? Yeah, if Walton's not on the team. Sorry. No, I don't think so. So I think that was important for them to be up there with like, hey, greatest team ever. And it was good for him so that he could be remembered as like he's won 2 titles. He led one team. He was 6th man on the other. I think he needed that for his legacy. I do. Yeah. He probably still gets into the Hall of Fame, but because of his college playing career too. But I think that solidified him and really gave the bookend moment. Because he gets hurt the next season, and then I think he's done. That's right? Retired. 87 last year. Yeah. So,
you know, I don't know. I think that was very important, and what a great team for him to finish his career.
Yeah, it just, I mean, you look back on it, obviously the hindsight's great, but it was perfect. He loved playing with Larry Bird, and which he'll brag about forever. And what's kind of funny is Larry said in an interview once, he was like, yeah, I've heard how much you admired my game and everything, but when he came to the Celtics, we were in awe of him. Like, Bird, McHale, Parrish, Johnson, like they watched him growing up. He was the best player on the planet when they were growing up.
Yeah.
And it was just a perfect match made in heaven. Like the way they played, the discipline in which they played, which is, I have to believe harkens back to his UCLA days. Like they did things the right way. They didn't have egos on the team.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to carry the load.
Yeah. Did the Celtics, did they lose one home game that year in 86?
They did.
And it was to Portland.
That's correct.
Isn't that that's weird?
What a weird thing.
I knew
they lost a February game to Portland.
I've always known that
January.
Because I always thought that was like, oh hey, we took that one game off them, that 86. But I forgot Walt was on that team, and I forgot. I wonder if that played a thing. I don't know. It seems like a coincidence.
50-1 at home.
50-1.
Yeah, probably 80 game schedules, 39 in the regular season.
Wow.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's crazy.
That's insane. But. Like, it really is too bad we didn't get a full career out of Walton, or even really half a career, because I'm like, I would have said this before he left us, not hopping on a bandwagon, like he would have been a top 10 player ever.
Yeah, for sure.
The skill set was just off the charts. So before I let you get out of here, though, like you talk about 77, that's the watershed moment for Portland, really, not just the Blazers, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, is that still, even though it didn't end well, and in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long that he was there, is that still like the one person you have to think of when you think of the Blazers?
He always will be in the conversation. I think because now
this is like a genuine question. I don't know.
And we're
I can't put myself in that fandom.
Oh my gosh, almost 50 years, past Walton's prime or when he won the title that year. And Portland fans always they gravitate towards the what if players. And if we didn't have so many of them, it would be, I bet Walton would always be the guy they'd go to, right? But, they, depending on who you talk to, Sabonis obviously didn't win a title for Portland, but
big fan favorite.
There will be fans that remember when we drafted him in 84, 85 or something like that, and then it took 10 years for him to get over here.
I know who you drafted first in 84.
Yeah. Oh man, and then it's just pass on Sam. Do we just pass on Sam and just get the other guard? Let's go Jordan and Clyde, right?
Oh man.
Brandon Roy, because he just how short a run Brandon had, but how electric he was from the guard position.
And now thinking back of it, you could have had a backcourt of him and Lillard for years. Could have had a Chris Paul backcourt.
For
there.
Sure. Could have had Chris Paul, pass on Chris. And so, Greg Oden doesn't quite carry the same because he was kind of there for half a second. He didn't really even have that moment with Portland, but people will always talk about that too. So, but Walton always gets he got the title though.
Yeah.
So everybody can say anything else they want to say about some of these other players, LaMarcus for his time there, and then he leaves San Antonio. But Walton got the title. So it's always he is, and then you add on the what if, and Portland fans will almost, I bet some fans in a weird, sick way, Cam, maybe are glad he got hurt because they can say in their head, yeah, we would have won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
We would have, but he got hurt.
There is something to that.
As opposed to actually seeing it play out and it didn't actually happen. But
and I know we're dealing in what ifs and hypotheticals, but I don't think this is that crazy. If you don't have Walton in that 77 title, it's tough to know if the Blazers exist today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's not a knock on Blazers fans or anything. It's just you saw really in that next wave in the 80s, the small markets started to really wane out. And I know Seattle survived for a while. And, Sacramento has survived barely, but they've survived. But like
the Vancouver Grizzlies there for a minute.
Vancouver and Buffalo, Kansas City, like Cincinnati a little bit before that. Like these markets were shooed away. St. Louis could survive in the ABA, but not the NBA. Yeah. Like there is no telling before we really start to get the league structure financially figured out in the mid-'80s that who knows? Yeah. Just who knows? The Blazers might not have survived it.
Well, and they end up getting the right owner too, right? Yeah. Paul Allen, who just had, the team could lose money and it didn't matter, right? Right. It's so rich and stuff.
And now it's too big.
But you're right. Like, does it even get to that point? It's hard to take a team. Well, I guess the Sonics won a title too, but it's hard to take a team that's won a title and move them somewhere else and change the name and all that stuff. And but yeah, I think that title solidified so much, and with the right person at the helm, and you add the what ifs to it, it just was all that perfect mix that fits Portland.
Bill Walton, man, he was great. He did have like a real impassioned speech that I wish I could find on YouTube about being a Celtic. So I've been watching that a lot.
Nice.
Or I've been thinking about it a lot because I can't find it. You think about it a lot recently.
Like when you brush your teeth in the morning, Cam, you got to find it and just to get you pumped for the day.
Just like,
let's go.
I was like, I am a proud Celtic. Like it's so awesome.
The greatest.
Like, he's like, this gave me my life back. And I'm like, yeah, me too, Bill. If they win this, yes. So
I got my life back.
Cory. Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
Coming on the show. Thank you for wearing that really sick, dripped-out warm-up.
Dude, this
that is perfectly oversized for like a 2002, 2003 music video.
This could, perfect.
Like literally,
like Walton could wear.
P. Diddy could wear this.
Like Bill Walton, this is his size. Like this is like a blanket for me. So
that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. I think you're rocking it though.
Thanks, Pete Souza.
And R.I.P. Bill Walton.
R.I.P. Bill Walton.
We are Rogue Media Sports.